Hi and welcome back to my channel. On this video, I'm going to be talking about the books that I've set aside to read in the month of July. And if you've been following these videos for a while, you know that I set aside some books in advance that I want to read over the course of a month. And then I also pick out 5 random books from my alphabet challenge using a random letter from the alphabet and then picking those books off of my Kindle so I can read books that I already own. And all of this adds up to at least 23 books that I hope to read each month in the year of 2023. Now, in the month of July, I decided to have a bit of a theme, and sometimes I do this depending on what I have on my list. And what I decided to do was compile a bunch of the books that I've heard like a ton of different people talking about that have gotten a lot of hype. So this is like my influencer month of really trying to read through a lot of things that I've heard great things about and that I've wanted to check out, a lot of new authors I've never tried before, and just some exposure to new books that I've been really interested in looking at. So I'm going to put them all in one month and see how far I can get. Now, mixed in with that, I also have some series books that I'm trying to get to as well. So let me start with those and then I'll go into the influencer books. So the first series that I want to keep reading is Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. Now, I finished book 1 in June, want to read book 2, which is called Words of Radiance, in July. And there is also a novella that comes after that book. It's like 2.5 called Edge Dancer, and I'm trying to get to that in July as well. I was hoping to read this series over the summer. Each book is quite long. They're about 1,000 pages or more, so I'm trying to kind of like speed up the process a little bit. The good news is the first book was super engaging. I'm really excited to keep going, but that's something that I have on my list. I also added on the 5th book in the Kay Scarpetta series by Patricia Cornwell. It's called The Body Farm, and this is another series I'm trying to get through this year. I think there's like 26 or 27 books in this series, so I also have to get going on this. So I added that to my list as well, and I think that's it. Okay, so on the list of like influencer books, many of these I don't know much about, but again, I've just heard like a ton of hype about them, so I wanted to learn more. So the first one is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. And I do know that this is a book that I think falls into kind of the fantasy realm. It says that after years of seeing her sister suffer at the hands of an abusive prince, Mara, the shy, convent-raised third ward daughter, has finally realized that no one is coming to their rescue except for her. And so she goes to a witch to get tools that she can use to kill the prince, and is sent on a quest, and it kind of continues on from there. So have heard really great things about that, excited to dive in. The next book is a new book that has recently come out called The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. I've heard some people compare this to like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and this is one that I actually decided to get on audio because it's kind of hard to track down, a copy of this. I had a physical copy from the library, but I had to return it. So I got an audio copy so that I can take a listen. Then I added The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. This is, I think, a sports-themed romance. Again, don't know a ton about it, but I've heard great things, so thought I would read that. And the next 2 books are ones that have been super, super hyped, and one of them is being, the first book in the series is being adapted into a movie, and so I wanted to make sure I read it before that movie comes out. These are, of course, Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us. These are 2 books. I mean, I think they're romances. I don't know much more than that. People are just like so emphatically in love with these books. I don't know why. I've read some other stuff by Colleen Hoover and it was okay, but I don't feel like I've read some of the things that people consider to be like their favorite things that she's written, and this is definitely one that a lot of people really love. I also added to my list a book called Shatter Me by Tahira Mafi, and this is the first book in a series that, again, I've just heard about over and over and over again. And basically it's a girl who I think when she touches people, she kills them. And so she hasn't touched anyone in like almost a year. And then she gets locked away. And so it's basically, again, kind of a fantasy set in a different world. And I just heard so much about it. So I thought I would pick it up. I think there are, let me just look and see. I think there's like 6 books in this series, and then there's a bunch of novellas as well. So if I really like it, I definitely have more that I can keep going with. Okay, also added to my list a book I'm super excited about. This book is actually being released in July, and I pre-ordered it so that it would come directly to my Kindle. and that is Hannah Bonham Young's Out on a Limb. Now, this is a book that I think is about a pregnancy. I think it's also about at least one character who has a missing limb. And this is the same author that wrote Next of Kin and Next to You, which were both books that I loved. And so as soon as I saw she had something else coming out, I automatically ordered it. I think this gets delivered to my Kindle on like July 11th. So I will be reading this in the month of July. Super excited to pick it up. Okay, next up, a book called It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This is a book that a lot of people have just loved as like a summer read, obviously because of the title. It is a romance. I think you'll find that a lot of the books on my list are romances because this is just the kind of genre that gets hyped a lot on social media. So I'm gonna pick that one up as well. Also, I recently got from my library audiobook, Happy Place by Emily Henry. Emily Henry, I've read several of her other books and have really enjoyed them. Happy Place is her latest, and so obviously it's getting hyped a lot. People love her, and I'm excited to pick that one up. I also added the first book in Pierce Brown's Red Rising saga, and it's called Red Rising. This is another kind of like fantasy. I think it might even be a dystopian fantasy. I don't know much about it. I did actually buy the box set of this because, and I have it on audio, because I've just heard really good things about it. And I have a couple of friends who've read this as well who really enjoyed it. So I kind of took the risk. The box set was like pretty cheap. And I thought, well, let me just get the physical copies of this. So I have those waiting in the wings. There's, I think, 6 or 7 books. One of them is like the most recent one that is just getting released right now. So this author is still publishing books in the series, and I'm excited to dive in there too. Okay. Then I added to my list a book called Trial of the Sun Queen, and I have heard this described as The Bachelor meets Hunger Games, which I don't know, sounds kind of fun. There's 10 women in a deadly contest to win the Sun King's heart. I also, some people say this is perfect for fans of Sarah J. Maas. I've been reading a lot of Sarah J. Maas lately. Again, super hyped, happy to pick it up. I also added to my list the first book in the Resistance trilogy. It's called Recruitment by K.A. Riley. And I'm looking to see kind of what the quick synopsis is. I think this is how, like, when people are 17, they get taken away, and she doesn't know, and the main character doesn't know what they get taken away to do, but it looks like it's like go to training. There's like military psychological tests. For fans of Hunger Games and Divergent. So it sounds like fantasy, kind of apocalyptic fantasy, or dystopian fantasy. So gonna grab that one as well. Okay, then next up, pretty traditional romance called Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I may have even had this on my list before because it's one that I just keep hearing about and keep hearing about. There's actually a second book on my list. I think that one involves like an ice skater and a hockey player. There's a second one on my list about ice skaters as well, called From Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata. I'm gonna try to separate those out a little bit because they sound like the plots could be somewhat similar. So I'll try to read those at different points of the month, but both of those have been super hyped. I also added to my list a book by Rebecca Yarros, who is the person who wrote Fourth Wing, which I just read and loved and everybody's talking about. She has an earlier book in her backlist called The Things We Leave Unfinished, which is, I believe, an epistolary romance novel. I'm always up for an epistolary novel, which is a novel that's based on like letters or emails. And so interested to check that out because I loved Fourth Wing. Okay, then I added to my list An Ember in the Ashes by Sabah Tahir. Again, a book that I like have seen everywhere, and basically what it says is there's a main character who's a slave, and another main character who's a soldier, and let's see. I think it's basically about people who are trying to survive in an empire where like defiance is met with death, and then you have these two main characters, the soldier and the slave, and they start to fight against kind of the government structure that they're living within. So again, sounds kind of like dystopian fantasy. A lot of dystopian fantasy on my list this month, apparently. Okay, then I added Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I believe this might be, or maybe there's another series that this author writes that was recently adapted into like a Netflix series. But in this one, It says Ketterdam, a bustling hub of international trade where anything can be had for the right price, and no one knows that better than criminal prodigy Kaz Brecker. Kaz is offered a chance at a deadly heist that could make him rich beyond his wildest dreams, but he can't pull it off alone. And so it looks like he's bringing together a crew to do a heist. Love a good heist book. Okay, then I put on my list City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. I have never read a Cassandra Clare book, but she has multiple series that all kind of intertwine together. This one is part of the Mortal Instruments, and then she has several other series that are kind of connected to this. Some people love this, and they think it's like part of their adolescence or part of their reading that they did when they were like a teenager. I think it's got kind of like a, not in terms of like plot or characters, but the way that people feel about Twilight, like they feel this way about Mortal Instruments. And so I thought I would pick it up and try it. So it says there's a 15-year-old and she witnesses a murder, and it's committed by 3 teenagers covered in strange tattoos and brandishing bizarre weapons. Then the body disappears and she doesn't feel like she can call the police. And this is her first meeting with the Shadow Hunters, warriors dedicated to ridding the earth of demons. I'm gonna test it out and see what I think. Okay, so I should have mentioned there are more than 18 books on this list, which is normally what I do because I just like compiled all these different ones that I've heard about. And so I probably will not get to all of these, but they'll be fun to try. Next up, I put on The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. And this is a book by Shannon Chakraborty or Chakraborty, I'm not sure how it's pronounced here. And she has another series called The City of Brass, which I have not read, but I've heard great things about. And basically this is a new trilogy, and it says of magic and mayhem with this tale of pirates and sorcerers, forbidden artifacts and ancient mysteries, and one woman's quest to seize a final chance at glory. I've heard great things about this. I do have it on audio. I'm excited to pick it up. Okay, a few more. I also added to my list The Serpent and the Wings of Night, and I'm pretty sure, yep, this is a vampire book. So I don't really read a lot of vampire books. They're not really my genre, but I heard really good things about this, and I'm just up for trying new stuff. And if people really like it, I'm willing to give it a shot. So I added that to my list as well. Also added Jennifer Armentrout's From Blood and Ash. This is another author that some people talk about alongside like Sarah J. Maas, but I've never read her before, so I thought I would try it. And quick description says, a maiden chosen from birth to usher in a new era. Poppy's life has never been her own. The life of the maiden is solitary, never to be touched, never to be looked upon, never to be spoken to. Waiting for the day of her ascension, she would rather be with the guards, fighting back the evil that took her family, than preparing to be found worthy by the gods, but the choice has never been hers. The entire kingdom's future rests on Poppy's shoulders, something she's not even quite sure she wants for herself. And then there's a golden-eyed guard, honor-bound to ensure her ascension, and I think they have a romance. So I will try that out and see what I think. And then the last predetermined book that I have on my list is a book by Samantha Shannon called The Priory of the Orange Tree. And this is a book that came onto my radar a while ago. She actually has a second book in this series that I think very recently released. And so I've seen this around. It's lengthy from what I remember, over 800 pages, which is probably why I haven't picked it up quite yet. But what the description says is, a world divided, a queendom without an heir, an ancient enemy awakens. The house of Berethnet has ruled for 1,000 years. Still unwed, Queen Sabran IX must conceive a daughter to protect her realm from destruction, but assassins are getting close to her door. And then there is a woman who is a position of a lady in waiting, and she keeps a watchful eye on the queen, protecting her with forbidden magic. And then there's another character who's a dragon rider, and yeah, I mean, there's all these different characters, and I don't quite know what's happening in this book, but it's 800 pages long, so I'm gonna take a chance and see what these look like. So as you can see, July is gonna be a very fun reading month. I'm just kind of like diving into a bunch of stuff that I've heard great things about. I'm gonna try some new authors and see what I like. And I've gotta pick out my 5 random books from my Kindle as well. So let me go ahead and pull up my Kindle list here so that I can have my alphabet in front of me. And I only have a couple of letters left that are kind of random letters for me to choose, because I've done this now for almost 2 years, year and a half. The letter I picked is H. So let me go to the H's in my Kindle, and I'm gonna try to pick 5. And I have already found the first one. It is called Half a Soul. And this is one that someone actually recently recommended to me. It's by Olivia Atwater. And somebody in my kind of like my network have read this and loved it. And it's basically like a Regency fairy tale. That's the series that it's called. So sure, I'm open to that. I'm curious to see what I'll think there. That's an easy one to pick. Let's see. And I'm going to continue my influencer theme by picking up The House in the Cerulean Sea. This is one, again, that I keep hearing about again and again and again. And I read the second book by this author, and it wasn't really for me, but I've heard so many good things about this first book that I'm willing to give it a shot. So I'm going to add that to my list. I am also going to add a book called House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. And this one is described as a dark, twisty modern fairy tale where 3 sisters discover they are not exactly all they seem, and evil things really do go bump in the night. All right, I'm willing to go there. I'm intrigued by the cover of this one, so that's part of why I'm going to add this to my list. I've had this on my kind of radar for a little while. It's looked interesting. Okay, so that's 3. Let me see if there are others here. All right, the next one I'm gonna pick is a book called Hostage by Claire McIntosh. And this is described as a locked room thriller, which I think it will be helpful to balance out some of the other things that I have on my list. But let's take a look at what the description says here. So, all right. This says it's a claustrophobic thriller set over 20 hours on board the inaugural nonstop flight from London to Sydney. And there's a flight attendant, main character, and she receives a chilling note from an anonymous passenger saying that the following instructions will save your daughter's life. Okay, so kind of a hostage situation on a plane, which is actually similar to a book I recently read called Falling. So interested to see kind of what I think there. And, ooh, there's so many good ones here, it's hard to pick. All right, the 5th book I'm gonna choose is a book called The History of Love by Nicole Krauss. And again, this is one that I've just heard about for a super long time and I've never picked it up. So it says, a long lost book reappears, mysteriously connecting an old man searching for his son and a girl seeking a cure for her widowed mother's loneliness. There's not a ton in the description here, but I've just heard, good things about this one. So I'm gonna try that one too. So those are my 5. I feel like it's gonna be a really good time in July to just like dig into a bunch of these. Some of these are really good summer reads, like a lot of focus on like adventure, fantasy, romance. So I think it's gonna be really fun. So stick around to the end of the month and see what I'm able to get through. Happy to update on what I really think about the hype on all of these books. And until then, happy reading.